Kia ora, welcome to the first series of Stuff That Matters Now, a podcast brought to you by Collective Intelligence. I'm Harv, aka Ian Harvey, founder of Collective Intelligence, and it's going to be my great pleasure in this series to introduce to you a bunch of really cool people who are making a difference in the world every single day. Our job here at Collective Intelligence is to help curious people evolve and become more courageous so they can tackle the stuff that's needed to make this world a better place. Before we crack on and talk about the stuff today's guest had to share with us, a big shout out to Rob McDonald and his talented team at Tiwanga Estate over there in Hawke's Bay. Not only do these guys make international gold medal winning wines, they've helped us bring this podcast to your ears. Brilliant stuff. Thank you, Rod. I'm talking to Ruth Kibble. Good morning, Ruth.
Good morning.
And this is kind of cool because I was supposed to be in Dunedin today, but it didn't come together. And now we're in Oamaru, and Ruth has very kindly slotted me into a day, and I've just been to the hospital. And so, Ruth, just quickly, what's your role?
My role is currently Chief Executive of Waitaki District Health Services Limited, which Oamaru Hospital is part of, but I am seconded into this position from a role at South Canterbury DHB, where my title is the Director of Primary Health Partnerships and Allied Health, which basically means I look after primary care there. They don't have a PHO, mental health and addiction services, older person's health, allied health, radiology and labs, services like that.
Huge job.
Yeah, so I've been down in the CEO role since September last year.
Okay. So that gives so we're going to be getting on to that down the track, Ruth, and talking about your journey with this role. So this is, and I know it's been a big 18 months for you with that role. Yeah. So just if we could just go back and talk about, give these guys an idea of where have you come from? Where were you born?
Okay, I was born. My parents lived on a dairy farm at Seacliff, just north of Dunedin. So we were second generation farming families there on a small dairy farm. I was the youngest of 4 children, and I really loved farm life actually, and we're quite proud growing up I could milk the cows by myself during haymaking and things like that. Yep. So Seacliff was a very small school that I went to. When I left in Form 2, there was only 11 students in the school, and I travelled through to Dunedin to high school. Was that
community quite a way out of town?
Yes, it was about 40 minutes out of town.
Right. Yep.
So people will recall that Seacliff for the mental hospital that was there.
Right.
Sir Truby King based his Plunket and early days of Karatani and Plunket services for babies there. I
drove past there today.
Yeah.
I drove past Karatani.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, so you will have driven past our old farm. So yeah, my parents had farmed there throughout their lives until they retired, and I went then through to high school in Dunedin and to Otago Girls, and because we didn't have any choice really, we were bus kids, we couldn't join in after school sports because of the buses, but my brothers and I were into Harriers in those days, so we would have Saturday running in Dunedin.
Right.
After high school, we went.
Were you a good girl?
Yeah, I was actually for the first 3 years, and the last year we had a lot of fun. But I was a bit quiet. I was that shy girl. I was a bit overwhelmed from a small school going into a big school. I hadn't transitioned through intermediate.
Yep.
I had just gone from 11 students in the whole school to quite a big school. But then after that, I went to Otago Polytechnic and I did my diploma in physiotherapy. So trained to be a physiotherapist, and which was a 3-year course at that stage. And
so that's not at the university, that's at the Polytech.
The Polytech, it was a Polytech course in those days. Right. Subsequently, it's changed to be a university course. So first 2 years we spent in Dunedin, and then for the final year my group went down to Invercargill for a year, which was a real education. We had a lot of fun down there. Good fun in Invercargill.
What year is this?
This was in 1984.
Right.
So I graduated in 84.
Yep.
Then I got married pretty soon afterwards, as you did in those days, and worked as a physiotherapist within the Dunedin Hospital. It was the Otago Hospital Board those days, until my first child, which was my son. So Hayden was born in 1988. And after that, I went back part-time to the hospital. I'd been on senior roles and overseen staff even at that period of time, rotated around all areas of the hospital pretty much. Then in 1990, my daughter was born, Gemma, and at that stage I resigned from the Otago Hospital Board because it was just too hard with 2 kids.
Yep.
But after a few months, about 3 or 4 months off, I got offered a job in special education at a primary school in Dunedin, which was just around the corner. I lasted there 1 term, and then I got asked to go to a job working in special education at a high school.
Why only 1 term?
I didn't particularly like the structure there. It was too constraining, and I actually got shoulder tapped to go to work at Queen's High School.
Yep.
In Dunedin. They had a mainstream unit for teenagers with disabilities, and absolutely loved that. And that was my first glimpse of a leader that was a bit different. And I remember fondly Pat Harrison, the headmistress at that school, who was a bit of a non-conformist in some ways in terms of setting up a creche on site for students and parents and staff's children. And she pushed those boundaries.
Ruth, that's out there.
That was out there.
Back then.
Yeah, and she really inspired me. And I know when I went on later to study, I actually studied and interviewed her, which was a real privilege, about her leadership style and what made her the type of leader that she was. It's in the
So what did you learn from that? What was the stuff that jumped out at you from that?
I learnt that actually to be more effective, you don't fit into the square. You had to be outside that square. That to be out there and pushing those boundaries was what made you stand out as a leader. That she could be really visionary and effective more by not conforming to the expectations, but actually of what was expected of her, but actually she used her own gut instinct about what was right and what wasn't right, and she didn't care too much sometimes about the rules.
That would have upset a few of the establishment?
Yep, but actually it had an amazing culture. So that was my first, this is really interesting, but still I was a hands-on physio at that point in time. In the late, coming up to the late 1990s, special education funding changed, and I disagreed with that fundamentally. It was a real move away from being able to deliver good services to the girls that we were working with.
Yep.
So I also then got asked to apply for another job back at the DHB up in a regional physiotherapy service. Again, setting up a service for people with disabilities in the community. Went in there, that was really good, ended up being a team leader, and I had an epiphany one day where I was being drawn more into management, and I said to my manager, I said, actually, look, I don't expect someone to work as a clinician without training and experience, so why should I be managing without that? So a very dear friend who's actually even consulting in my workplace today, Karen Russell, she was doing a piece of consulting work with us at that point in time, and I confided in Karen, and I started off my MBA journey at in Otago University. So I enrolled for the DBA for a start. For a wee girl from Seacliff, that was a really big move. So I didn't believe in myself, but actually I did quite well in the first few papers, and very soon I grew and then went to work at Presbyterian Support Otago.
So just go back. So you went through, how long did that take?
I didn't complete it because actually my career journey kept changing and moving, and I only completed half of the DBA before I got a job where I couldn't attend the structured lectures. Right. So I dropped it for a few years to pick up later.
Yep. So what was happening with the kids at this stage?
The kids, so I was back then by a single parent and I had remarried. So I'd gone through that marriage breakup, remarried again.
We skipped over that.
Skipped over that, and it's probably quite relevant, some personal growth in there actually. But after the DHB, I went to work at Presbyterian Support Otago as managing their community-based services for older people. That was a strong values-based organisation, and that's where I felt my values really started to hum and ping. Actually, this felt right. We were doing the right thing. It wasn't about money only. It was about quality of service. It was about supporting people in their homes. And during that time, I stayed on with my study.
Was that the first time you'd been in a zone that you thought, this is me?
Yeah. That was the start of the This Was Me. So during that 3 years I was there, they introduced new sector standards for the services, which we absolutely sailed through. We got to introduce a new pilot program, keeping people eligible for rest homes, staying at home. We did really well with that. And I also got involved in workforce development. That's a very special workforce, that workforce that's out there working in people's homes. So again, nudging up my management experience during that time, but I then got asked again to apply for a role with the industry training organisation for developing the health and disability support workforce.
Right.
They had a pilot program that we had been part of that pilot, which was about on-job training for that workforce, and they wanted me to come in and pick that up. So I then did another job change to Careerforce, the ITO, where I stayed there for 3 years, firstly to finish off that pilot and then in a workforce development role.
Ruth, just going back, there seems to be lots of shoulder tapping in your career.
Yeah.
What's that about?
Don't know.
No, that's bullshit. What do people see?
Oh, look, and this is probably my weakness, is that internal looking. I think what they see is authenticity, actually. I think I'm really committed, and I think that values-based approach and about doing the right thing was really good. I think I am what you see. I don't bullshit myself up.
Yeah.
In fact, if anything, I'll talk myself down rather than over-talk my abilities. But also, I like to think differently about things. I get bored maintaining. I love to make a difference and to improve things.
Yep.
So
in the entrepreneurial world, right, we get that, right?
Yep.
So, but in the health sector, this could be a bit problematic, Ruth.
Yes, it can be, and probably that came in more from my more recent role. That becomes a bit more problematic.
Okay, so we'll get to that. We'll go back to the journey. Okay, but so you've been shoulder tapped because of your authenticity, no bullshit, values based,
and also I'm prepared to pick up the roles sometimes that people don't want. So actually, the regional physio role, they had recruited and tried again, and then I got shoulder tapped. And one of the reasons I went there actually was that the rehab specialist at the time, who I really admired greatly, he gave me my first really good bit of advice around leadership, and that was, if the solution isn't obvious, if you're trying to make a decision and the right decision's not obvious, just don't make the decision. You haven't got enough information yet. And I've held that through with, as I've gone forward, really, is actually trust that gut. So that's starting to think about that gut reaction and trust that gut, and you'll know when you've got it right, but don't stuff it up by making half-informed decisions.
Right.
So then So my career force, that went really well. Good job, but I got over the travel. My kids were in the late teenagers. I was travelling 3 or 4 days a week from Dunedin, and
To where?
all over the country.
Right.
So I was on a plane more often than not. I was in a hotel room more often than not, and I got quite bored. I wasn't actually actively looking for a job, and then I saw South Canterbury DHB were doing something interesting. They were the first area in New Zealand to be allowed to not have a primary health organisation.
Mm-hmm.
So they were bringing those primary care services back in-house and doing some quite disruptive out there change.
So just talk me through that, Ruth. So, you hear about PHOs and all that sort of carry on. So just break that down into layman's terms so we can understand it.
Okay. So DHBs get the funding for the population in their community from the ministry through population-based funding.
Mm-hmm.
Part of that will go out directly to services and to contractor providers and to their own services.
What do they look like? What's a contractor or provider?
It might be an aged care facility.
Okay.
So DHBs have contracts with them.
Yep.
They have contracts with people like rural hospitals. But also GPs get funded in the local areas. So based on...
Through the DHB?
Via the PHO.
Right.
So DHBs fund the primary health organisation.
Got it.
Who contract the GPs.
Got it. Okay, so what were Timaru doing differently?
So their PHO fell over.
Yes.
And lost the confidence of the GPs. So they took out that loop so that the DHB then had a direct relationship with the GPs.
Okay. But wouldn't that make sense, Ruth, because it's less bureaucracy and so forth?
Totally. So there is pros and cons to it, but absolutely it does make sense. There is a couple of cons there, but it makes an awful lot of sense. So our GPs in Timaru were much closer to linking in with the DHB. The con is you haven't quite got that ring fence funding. So the risk is how you ensure that the funding gets distributed easily and evenly across the care journey between hospital.
Where it's supposed to go.
Yep.
But that could be sorted.
Absolutely.
Yep, that could be sorted. So is this a model that others have followed or are interested in?
Others have been interested in it. They haven't been allowed to follow it because it had to be approved by the minister. So other areas, particularly small areas, have been interested but haven't been allowed to follow. Currently, Heather Simpson's doing the health services review, and I'm sure there will be some discussion around what happens to all of the primary health organisations in New Zealand.
Okay. So you were attracted to this, and this is up in Timaru?
Yep.
So is that you shifting from Dunedin?
Yeah, look, you know how sometimes you just throw in an application saying, oh, gosh, that looks interesting. And, oh, actually, by the way, Martin, I've got an interview next week. And actually, before I got back to Dunedin, I had a job offer. And I said, the interview I had today went quite well. In fact, I've got a job offer. We might need to move house. And I'm starting in 6 weeks. So I hadn't really thought about it too much, but we're at the point that we wanted to do something different. So went out there and absolutely loved
So Martin
the role.
just packs up.
Yep.
Goes with you.
Absolutely. So, he was able to do that. He had his own small business in Dunedin and he came up to Timaru and he actually built our house, which kept him amused for the first couple of years.
Right. Okay.
So then... While I was in Timaru, though, I had unfinished business. I hadn't finished my papers at university.
Yes.
So I transferred to the executive MBA through Massey.
Did you need to do that?
I did. I had unfinished. I couldn't cope with a partially finished qualification.
Is it the good girl thing coming out?
Partly the good girl and partly actually there was a wee bit of conceit there. Wouldn't it be good to have a master's because I was only a physio? So I think I needed to do it from that side of things. So I did my MBA and that was really, really good. It opened my eyes. It gave me diversity. So we had a small South Island cohort. So the first year we worked together, we did cool study tour in Europe, which opened my eyes to diversity. And I got thinking, gosh, I wish I was 10 or 15 years younger doing this, because actually perhaps I would have then stepped aside from health. I sort of sometimes feel I might be a bit beyond stepping aside from health, but that's another story. So I absolutely loved it, and then finished that and thought, what next? And very soon I started becoming professionally stale. And that's when I talked to Ballard one day, who's a CQ member in Timaru.
Ballard Pritchard.
Yes, absolutely. And he talked to me, and hence the connecting with CQ.
Right.
But I have jumped a big part of
Which
my
we call
professional...
collective intelligence
Absolutely.
now.
Absolutely. So, but I have jumped quite a big part of my personal development, which was going through a marriage breakup.
Why did you connect with Ballard?
Because he got it. He got it. He got the need for... I needed to debrief at that time about the struggles I was having within health and within the health team.
Yep.
I was having pressure to conform.
Yep.
And I also wanted to stay true to what I believed. And I needed another avenue apart from the team I was working with them to actually express that and explore that.
Right. Had the MBA sort of shaken you up to wanting to use that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It really did. So I think without the MBA, I would have been quite a focus and have quite a narrow focus to my life and my professional life. I think the MBA opened up my thinking and my life quite significantly.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's interesting, and because the thing with the MBA is that, I've had this conversation before on podcasts. We pick up quite a number of people who have done MBAs, and they miss their cohort, and they miss the diversity, and they miss that mental challenge. And coming into collective intelligence, I mean, it's quite different, but there are some similarities there that you've got your cohort back.
Totally. Yeah.
And you get stretched into that mental stretch into other areas that you've got to exercise.
And absolutely, and I think for the MBA, the technical learning part's part of it, but it was the other side that I probably valued as much as anything, which is that stretch. Right. That stretch and that challenge.
Yeah. And it's interesting because, I mean, people can't see this today, but Ruth is wearing bright pink today, and when I came to your office, you dress not flamboyant is not the right word, but with a lot of colour and expressive and all that sort of carrot, right? It's not necessarily what people would expect from a CEO of a hospital.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Yep. So you're a bit out there.
Yeah, and look, being a CEO, that happened fairly quickly, and it wasn't planned on that. But this opportunity I've had has been a great stepping stone, but there was no blueprint to follow. Right.
So going back to Ballard, the conversation with Ballard, you've got the MBA. So then what happened? What was the...
Well, we had the interview. I've picked up and followed through on it with Ballard very quickly, and you interviewed me, and... quite ironically, we only met person to person for the first time last week.
I know.
Which is quite ironic. And it really resonated and gelled. And I had that sense, that real gut feeling that actually this is what I'd been looking for.
Yep.
And there was nothing to lose. So came into a team, and amazing team. And what really surprised me was how quick you can get trust in a diverse team, where actually this team that I'm part of, we've had some changes. It's just magic. That trust, that araha, that love, that support, that challenge, that ability to make each other uncomfortable where we need to be uncomfortable is just what I need. I need to have that mind fed, really, and challenged.
Yeah, look, and the team's called... Team Fifi.
Yes.
And I was the facilitator of Team Fifi when they came up with the name.
Yes.
And do you know what it's?
I only found out recently.
Yeah, it was stunning, and it came from a school principal, and he said, "Look, we need to either fix it or fuck it."
Yep.
And everybody laughed, and it became known as Team Fifi after that. And it's been interesting to see. I mean, all teams evolve and move forward and so forth, and it's been very cool to see Team Fifi move. So you joined that collective intelligence team how long ago?
It would be July, I think, last year was my first meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And professionally, what was happening in your life at that point?
It was just before I got approached for this role. So I was in that mixed space of where am I going in my current role at the DHB. We had undergone 2 restructures, and I was struggling to find my feet and my place in that. So very quickly after that first meeting, I got a call from Southern DHB CEO, had talked to my CEO to see if I wanted to come and help out in Oamaru. And at that point, it was a come and help out. They've got some challenges. So I agreed to come down. I saw this is an opportunity.
Just so the geography, Timaru, Oamaru, do the 2 towns, do they work together much?
No, so it's an hour 5 drive from me from home to here.
Yep.
We've got the Waitaki River, so we sit across 2 DHB regions.
Right.
Southern DHB, who's a primary funder of Oamaru Hospital, didn't want to put one of their own people in because of the tensions that would create.
Right.
Their chief executive had worked up at South Canterbury when I was there, and he rang Nigel and said, hey, listen, would Ruth be interested potentially in coming down to help out in Oamaru?
Right. So it was bringing some new blood that wasn't. So there was a bit of tension and stuff going on.
Absolutely.
Here before. Right.
Absolutely. And so Oamaru at that time had an interim CEO.
Yep.
And then I was put in as CEO from September last year.
And that's a permanent role, so that's not interim or anything. That's a permanent role.
No, it's on a service level agreement. So I'm still technically employed by South Canterbury DHB.
Yep.
But I'm seconded out basically under a service level agreement, which has just been extended to the end of June next year, and it's just continually been reviewed.
Okay, so that is. So, what was it like turning up into that environment?
Well, it was interesting. The first day, the day we'd had a meeting in Dunedin about it, the board chair, the CEO from the DHB, and the first day I thought I'll give them a ring just to find out what time they're expecting me. And the day before I went down, and so I gave them a ring, and they didn't know I was coming. Good start.
That's amazing.
Good start.
So if it was a film, the music would be fairly bleak at that point.
Absolutely. So that was perhaps not the best platform to start on. So I backed off for a couple of days and then came back down again. It was very challenging. The organisation was having severe financial viability issues and clinical quality and sustainability issues. We didn't have doctors covering our ED. We had to close ED. We had real issues across the board.
You had to close your emergency department? Just
for different times of the days because we couldn't get doctors. We either didn't have them employed, but we couldn't even get locums to come and work for us.
So as a local, Ruth, I mean, as a local Ruth, you're telling me that if I had an accident and I was heading to ED with the accident, I'd be diverted to somewhere else.
You could be. It may be that the nurses could have picked you up. We didn't have good relationships even with St John then, or even our GPs. So really, my take on it was things were pretty shaky.
Right. Okay. So this is what you stepped into.
Absolutely. So I stepped into a structure which had been very CEO-centric without a team approach, a strong team approach.
Yep.
I stepped into a structure where the nurse manager and the clinical leader of medicine both resigned quite quickly and left on short notice, which was interesting. But what the opportunity is that enabled me to step back and say, so what do I need to do here? Actually, this is bigger than me, and I need a team approach.
So, Ruth, just look, it's easy to talk about afterwards, but this will be pretty challenging, some pretty dark days, I'd imagine, for you.
Yep, it was scary as shit because I had no medical lead sitting there beside me, and we're running a hospital with an emergency department. We at that stage had a 4-bed, what they called a high dependency unit, which really wasn't, and a 20-bed ward. And we did have some doctors in the ward, but they could not work in ED.
Right. Because?
Of their scope of practice.
Right. So how do you tackle, because I'm really interested in this, how do you turn something like that around?
So my first thing was to reach back to Timaru, and there's an amazing doctor there who's now the Chief Medical Officer, Robin Carey. And I said to Robin, who had worked in Oamaru before, I said, Robin, help. Where do I go? Who do I need to talk to? And she gave me some headers, and she had an amazing doctor, Dr. Pragati Gautama, doing some locum work there, and I gave Pragati a ring and said, can we meet for lunch? And Pragati and I just hit it off, and I saw a lady who could stand beside me. We shared the same vision. We shared the same standards about clinical excellence.
But Pragati was based in?
She was doing locums all over the place.
Okay.
And she had worked previously for Oamaru Hospital and had walked out after one weekend and said, I'm never coming back.
Right. Okay. So Pragati, what's her profession?
So she's got fellowship in rural hospital medicine. Oamaru's a rural hospital, and general practice. So she's both a GP and a rural hospital doctor. She had also been the clinical leader for the rural hospital training program.
Right. So you reached out to her, you got on.
Yep.
And then what?
Then she was appointed the clinical director.
And she took it on?
She took it on because we both shared a vision and we were both up for the challenge. We just connected really well.
Okay.
Also, during that time, I had...
What's the connection, do you reckon? What do you think the connection is?
I think it's pretty special, actually. It is... We challenge each other. We're both strong, forthright women, but we've both got courage, and we've both got belief that the community deserves good standards of healthcare. So it's not about... It's about the community, and it's about the patients' care and what they should expect and deserve.
So when you, because in a relationship like this, there's going to be friction at times, right? You might get on, but there's going to be, so the thing that keeps you glued together is the wanting to do what's right for the community?
Yep.
Right.
Absolutely.
Because I believe that when you've got a purpose, a common purpose, that's the glue.
Yep.
That, it's a bit like passion in certain areas will keep you going. Yep. But if you've got a common purpose, that will hold you together.
I think that is ours. And I think, because, to be honest, I both had people saying, why on earth are you taking this on? Pragati had people saying, why on earth are you going back to Oamaru Hospital? It's a mess. That just entrenched our determination to say, actually, no, this should be better.
We're going to do this.
Yeah.
We're going to do this. So that's two of you?
Yes, and then I looked around who was already there.
So was Pragati then, she was full-time?
From January. So she came in from January. She helped me a wee bit in December in an advisory role, but she had prior commitments. But also during that time, sort of October, November, I looked around and I had this really talented young woman who had been there for 14 years in an admin role doing her human resource professional development, and advertised, and she got the job of human resources officer because we had no HR person previously. Mm-hmm. And also I had a look there, and we had a really strong person there as the quality coordinator, which changed the role to a quality and risk leader. So we looked as to what talent we already had in the organisation. Yep. And we were also looking for a director of nursing or a nurse lead. So we were starting to build a team, and during that time I knew that there was massive issues with sustainability, financially and clinically. I reached out, and with the support of Southern DHB, we had a critical friend review happening. Critical friend review. So Carl from Gore Health came up, and he had a review of the hospital and identified areas, which was really valuable because it gave me some confidence we were on the right track. And we started preparing a significant change process that we were determined not to launch until after Christmas.
Right.
I needed my team on board for that to happen.
So the team is 4 or 5 people?
Yeah.
Now, okay. Yeah. And fitting that team together, because, I mean, it's great getting individuals that have got the talent and so forth, but clicking them together doesn't always go well.
No, and I don't know how we've done it.
Oh, good. Roy, thank you. This podcast is around how you did it.
Right.
We don't know how to
No, I don't know how we did it. We just, I think when I recruited people, it was about their attitude.
Right.
As much as the technical skills, it was about their attitudes.
Okay.
Because actually we have to be quite strong, and actually that trumps everything.
And their attitude, what attitude were you looking for?
The attitude was they needed to be brave.
Right.
Okay. They needed to communicate well and have fun. So we had to be able to support each other. And we needed to be brave about the changes, but also want the same thing. We wanted to improve the services.
There you go. That's that people. Common. That's that going back to that. Thread. That's that purpose again, isn't it?
Yeah.
Fascinating. If Tim Jones is listening to this, he's a guy up in Christchurch, and his whole thing's about purpose.
Yeah.
You know, and people's mental health and a whole range of stuff. When they actually connected to their purpose, everything goes better.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that was So that's a team of 5. How many people are you impacting in the hospital?
About 140 head count. But
right. So 5, 140. Okay, that ratio is not great.
No. Well, what we did with the restructure is I saw an organisation that was very disempowered. All the decisions were made at the CEO level predominantly. Right. And that's not me. I'd stuff it up. If I had to make every decision, I'd make bad decisions.
Yeah, so you're not a great dictator.
No, is my biggest weakness.
Yeah.
So with our proposal for change, I believe actually clinicians dealing with the patients should be able to make the decisions that are relevant at that point in time.
In real time.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So we have gone through and flattened that structure quite significantly. We've got service leaders in each of the services. So, for example, in the inpatient area, we now have a nurse that's a shift leader for the shift, okay, rather than a charge nurse manager role, because we're too small for that degree of hierarchy. We've got a shift leader who reports through to the director of nursing. So we, for the size of the organisation, we had 5 tiers for some people reporting previously.
Right.
Which was just not on. So we've flattened that out. That's been jolly hard for our staff. It's been a hard process for people to be empowered. to deal with that, it's also...
That doesn't sort of make sense. It's been hard when people are empowered. Hard for them.
Hard for them, yeah, true. It's been hard for them to actually deal with the expectation that actually you can now make decisions.
Right. So up until then, they were soldiers going about doing their thing.
Yep.
And now they've got responsibility and accountability, and
they would delegate up all the time.
Right.
And I'm not into that.
Interesting, isn't it? That actually empowering people is scary for them sometimes.
Yep. And it's scary for us as well, because actually people need to be able to make the odd stuff up.
Yep.
That's okay.
Yep.
And I think when I look back, one of the biggest mistakes I made was actually understand how scary that was for staff.
Right. So if you did something, if you went back and did it differently, what would that be? In that specific situation?
Probably openly acknowledging that an awful lot more. Our restructure was done very quickly. We had to. We didn't have time. So I think what I would have done more is talked more about the why it had to happen so fast. But because we had a leaky structure, so our proposal for change was out to the media within 2 hours.
Right.
We've had to be quite cautious along the way about what we say and give to our staff.
So that would be local media?
Yes.
Picking it up, feeding on. They would know that the hospital hadn't been functioning that well?
Yes.
So you've got a level of not a lot of confidence already?
Yeah.
Right. And so bad news is fabulous news.
Absolutely. And we had a joke in our leadership team, at least if a cat was stuck up the tree, the heat would come off us for change. But yeah, and we also were dealing with, in parallel, ex-staff in the community who have been actively pushing against the work that we've been doing.
Right. Yeah, it happens. It happens because I just think this will be the biggest business in town.
Yeah, probably the freezing work will be up there.
You've got freezing
works, yeah.
Okay, because often people don't realise just how big a business a hospital is.
Absolutely.
They're huge.
Yeah, and look, people had stayed here for a long time. People that had worked here 30 years were not uncommon. 40 years. So people had stayed with the company and they had experienced a significant change when the hospital moved 19 years ago, but actually they hadn't experienced heaps and heaps of significant change.
Right. And they're still talking about the hospital being shifted 19 years ago?
Absolutely. Yeah. And the other ironical thing is that there's reports going back for a number of years about concerns about safe staffing and how things were done. So actually, it wasn't all rosy before we started. It was quite broken in many respects.
Yeah, but human nature is often, it's broken, but I'm going to stay. I'm going to stay here, right? I'm going to stay with this thing, even though it's broken, because that's what we know. That's what we know.
Absolutely.
So, Ruth, where are you? So, how many months through this program?
Okay, so we the final main part of implementation started finished on the 1st of July. We've got a couple of areas that we're still tailing off around our admin team, and we have got a workout plan that will take us to financial sustainability by June next year. We're coming right by about April. And clinically, our biggest issue and one of our biggest roadblocks currently has been able to recruit permanent doctors so that we can reduce our dependence on locums, which are killing us financially.
Right.
We've had some stunning locums though, so they've given us that clinical excellence and that standard.
Yep.
But we need to turn that around.
Right. So you'll be able to lift the standard and going, this is how we're operating. Okay. And do any of those locums become permanents?
Yes, we've already got one locum that has is finishing with us as a locum very soon, and he's permanent back with us from January.
Brilliant.
So we are converting, and there's a change. There's a change in the feel across the community and across the hospital, and actually we've got applications now for doctors. So we've got a way forward. It's just the timing.
People are attracted to a good vibe, right?
Yeah.
And health, I was going to say, it's people talk across the sectors and they know what's working, what's not.
Yeah, absolutely. However, on the other side, we were at a meeting recently, about 23 rural hospitals in New Zealand, 53 senior doctor vacancies. So, the workforce issues haven't been isolated to us in terms of recruitment. So the fact that we're getting interest now is actually really heartening, because actually that is flowing a bit against the tide that other hospitals are experiencing.
Yeah. And Oamaru is, it's a stunningly beautiful place,
Absolutely.
isn't it? Just that whole, the sea right there, and
Absolutely.
it's a very cool place. And, you've got all the lifestyle options with skiing and all that sort of carry on your doorstep too. So, Ruth, where you're on the cycle, where would you say you're with the cycle? Do you feel as though it's starting to succeed?
Yes, it is. Yeah. Look, July was probably our darkest month, our hardest month. It was a real pressured time. We had lots of adverse media. We were just new. People were scared of the changes. Everything was happening quite quickly. And that was probably a real hard month. And
so that's only 3 months ago?
Yeah.
That was your darkest time?
Yeah.
And, so that 3 months on, that's pretty quick.
Things have happened very quickly. Like, if you think about the February the 11th, we launched this, and actually here we are in September.
Yeah.
And we're starting to come out. So we did it very hard and fast because we had to.
Yep.
But actually, there's some benefits in that as well.
Yep.
Tough on everybody, but actually we're now rebuilding.
Ruth, I was a farmer when Roger Douglas came in and brought on these changes.
Yeah.
And at the time we said, it's terrible, it's too fast, we can't cope and so forth. And I'm not sure there was another way to do it.
No.
It was. I don't think we could have done it slowly. No. And while we hated it at the time, we came out of it so much quicker. Absolutely.
So, with hindsight, would I do it the same way? What would I learn? I think there's pros and cons both ways. And I know staff and community probably would say slow it up. Actually, some staff would probably just want to get it done.
Yep. So your journey through this, how's it been for you?
The collective intelligence team has been a real strength, and my leadership team that works alongside me have been awesome. So team is the real key here.
Yep.
So yes, it does come on my shoulders, ultimately because of my role. However, I've shared that load with the team. We've had our highs together, we've had our lows together. But they've kept me really grounded, and, as is my other team at home, which is my husband, keeps you very grounded. So I think what's been really important for me has been helpful not living in this community during this time.
Yep.
I've got that hour distance and been very conscious of the need to have that balance around exercise, taking breaks, taking some leave, and keeping a balanced perspective.
Interesting, isn't it? Just how that human factor, you cannot ignore it.
No, you can't ignore it. And there's times I could have burnt out, absolutely, but managed to pick myself up. The other thing that we use as a strategy a bit and is that actually I try and work from home 1 or 2 days a week.
Okay, yep.
And so that takes off that dependency from the CEO making all the decisions.
Right.
I'm still present on site, but I get a lot of work done. But it's my thinking time, as is my driving time.
Yeah, driving. I love driving.
Yeah.
It's can be a really productive time. So the future, Ruth, what's the future for you?
Oh, that's what my collective intelligence team
Oh,
have
really?
challenged me with, is what is my future. I really like making a difference and making things better, not changing for change's sake. But there is some pride about being able to pick something up and make it better for the people. So again, that values-based approach is really important. I'm not sure where the future does lie at this point in time. I need to do some big thinking around that.
Right. Will you stay with health?
Not sure.
No, there's an itch there, isn't there? I can
There's
tell.
an itch to do something different. There is an itch. And this is where I need to start believing in myself about what can I offer outside of health.
Yeah, it's an interesting. It's not that MBA. It's interesting. I could see the shake up with that.
Yeah,
and go, I actually could do other stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And at one stage, I thought my journey was going to be going down the directorship route. I'm not quite so sure on that now. Actually, I'm just thinking.
I think you enjoy the coalface too much.
Yeah.
Actually getting your hands dirty and on the, yeah.
Yeah, I like establishing teams. I think that's what's really important to me, actually. If I say, what am I really proud of? And it would be, actually, we've got a team of people that are working together collectively with the same vision.
Yeah. Look, it's and for the listeners, I actually met with Ruth's team this morning when I first got to Oamaru, and you could feel the energy between them. Right, it was quite interesting, just the camaraderie there, and there was definite professional. That professionalism was alive and well, but there was a real camaraderie there between them. That was quite palpable.
Yeah. We've got quite a warped sense of humour as a team. We've used humour an awful lot to get us through.
Yeah. It's a great thing, eh?
Oh, absolutely. But we feel quite safe. We do the morning dump down. We have our coffees together and things like that, just to keep that team spirit going.
Right. So the future could be in the health sector. It could be in entrepreneurial sector, could be...
Oh, starting to get uncomfortable now.
It's funny, Ruth, because, meeting you, I pick up on that entrepreneurial spirit, because I think that's what you bring to that's what I think you bring to the table. The problem with that is that we often like to then move on to the next thing.
Yep.
And we get bored really quickly. Yep. And day-to-day or maintenance stuff, we get it to a level and we want to hand it on to somebody else. Yep. Yeah? 3
years is my limit for the last few roles.
Right.
I keep changing every 3 years.
Well, Ruth, good luck with these next stages. And, you've still got some work to do at this hospital to get this bedded down, right?
Absolutely.
How far through the process of this positive change do you think you are, as a percentage-wise?
Look, I think we're only about 45% actually.
Yep.
Yeah, I think we're about 45%. We're starting to plan now rather than react.
Yep.
And I think until the last person is and the last department is really bedded in, we can't say our job's done.
Yep. So that would mean, given your personality type, you get it to 80% and you move on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, interesting.
The last 10 to 20% will not be as exciting.
Yeah. And somebody else could do it better.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So would you, and this is a generic question, your successor, would you be looking to develop those from within, or would you be wanting to bring them from outside?
Good question. I definitely want to develop. I think there is some potential from within. I'm quite open-minded about this at this point in time. I think because of provincial New Zealand being quite small and insular, there will be somebody that can take it to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
And it may take that external thinking, experience, expertise to help that. I'm very clear that there's quite an exciting growth pattern and potential there around health hubs and things like that as we go forward. That may be someone else's expertise and work to be done rather than just mine.
Right. Right. Ruth, good luck. It is fabulous to be here, and it's fabulous to talk to you at this stage when, often you talk to people when they've finished and looking back, but you're still in this process coming through. And I really enjoyed meeting your team this morning because you had the feeling they'd been through the trenches.
Yep.
And that bonds people, and listening to them with their, just quickly with their journey coming through. You could tell they'd been through some tough times. Yeah. But the self-belief was really palpable, that they were there and that they were unshakable. Yeah. Yeah, it's a very, very cool thing to see.
It is. I think there's one risk sitting alongside that, is what happens when one or two members of the team change. What does that do going forward? Because actually sustainability is my belief. I don't want to leave the organisation and have it fall apart. It can't be about me.
No, yep, absolutely.
So we've got to have a team that has that resilience to transcend changes that will obviously happen over time.
Yeah. Yeah. So with that, and just to finish off, so I was going to shut that down now, but you've spiked a curiosity there. With somebody new coming into your team, somebody moved out, what would be your induction process into the team?
Okay. We've just recently been through this actually with our finance, and we've actually just outsourced a finance role, and actually we just gave them shit. Actually,
that's the induction.
Well, we did proper content stuff, but actually into the team, this is how we treat each other, and actually we're not treating you any different, and I think he loves it.
So when you're talking about giving shit, you're talking about having fun.
Having fun, the banter that you saw today.
Yeah.
Yep, we're not going to act any differently. We join in, we'll treat you like we treat each other.
Yeah, yeah, it's that's something that's really dear to my heart, is that I love having fun.
Yep.
We spend a lot of time at work, and I believe in having fun at work, and it's one of our values in the office is to have fun, and it creates its own energy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the define. Yeah, okay, interesting. Ruth, thank you very much. You've just been listening to an episode of Stuff That Matters Now, brought to you by Collective Intelligence. I hope you enjoyed listening to the fun stuff, the rugged stuff, and the complete stuff-ups that have helped this particular Collective Intelligence member evolve while making the world a better place. Do check out our Stuff That Matters Now podcast series on your favourite podcast provider, or visit our website www.collectiveintelligence.co.nz to get links to new episodes. Contact us if you want to learn more about how we can help you evolve yourself and others. Thanks for listening.